After the pomp and pageantry of the state funeral at Westminster Abbey yesterday, attended by leaders from across the globe, Queen Elizabeth II was buried at Windsor Castle with a more intimate commuter service that was held at St. George's Chapel. Nigeria's Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, who represented Nigeria at the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II in London, also stressed that the presence of world leaders at the burial of the Queen shows the level of cooperation among nations of the world. Speaking with newsmen after attending the state funeral of the late British monarch at Westminster Abbey in London, the Vice President prayed for a successful reign for King Charles III. Joining us now on this show to review the funeral service of Queen Elizabeth II is Ambassador Joe Keshi, former Nigerian ambassador to the United States. Well, good morning, Ambassador Joe Keshi. Thank you very much for joining us. Were you ambassador to the U.S. or the consul general?
Yes.
You were consul general.
Former PAMSEC Ministry of
former
Foreign
PAMSEC
Affairs.
Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Anyway, it's good to have you physically on the program. Previously, you joined us, from Abuja, in the Abuja studio. But here you are with us in Lagos.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to meet you live.
Thank you so much. Glad to meet you, sir.
So quickly, your thoughts on the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II.
Well, I like to sometimes domesticate, bring this in back to what goes on at home. When you look at the pageantry, the organization, the history that we saw, the magnificent, building and the organizational capacity displayed by the British. If you relate it back here, you begin to see that truly, at the end of the day, we really do not need strong men or women. What we need is strong institutions. Because, look, somebody told me yesterday and said, oh, the Queen had already given instructions. And I said, yes, she gave instructions. She laid out what needs to be done, but she did not execute it. Others were paid or part of their responsibility. And the fact that it was so seamless, and the fact that there was practically no mistake, as you could point out, just shows you what it is to have an organizational capacity, to have institutions that are strong and capable, knowledgeable, and able to deliver at any given time. I give this example, that was amazing. The flight, the body left when the Scottish, where the Queen died, it left at the exact time that it was indicated. It arrived at Edinburgh Airport exactly the time that was on paper. The flight left exactly the time that it was supposed to leave. It landed in London exactly the same time that it was supposed to land. And the body got to Buckingham Palace exactly. What does that tell you? It just tells you the ability of, the British folks to organize things. And that is something, I sincerely hope, and one last thing, because this is very important. given the fact that our protocol has completely broken down in this country. Did you see security operatives fighting to be with their principals? It's not done. All the principals, all the security, aides, security fellows did not even get near there. But those military officers, the Queen, the Duke, the new King, his kids were in military uniform, their aides collected their cap at the door of the church and disappeared. In our own case, the security people will be fighting not just to get in, but they insist against protocol that they must sit behind their principals. And the last thing, their principals, of course, do come late in this country. Long before the body left Buckingham Palace, everybody was seated in the church just waiting. If you could show the one event I attended in Abuja not too long ago, Bishop Kuka's event, all the VIP invited came late, except maybe President Jonathan and 2 other officials from government. And when they come in late, they don't even have the respect for the people and the fact that the program has started to quietly sit down. They go about, they chat, they hug. Meanwhile, somebody is standing that has already started speaking. So you begin to see that there's the need for also to recreate what we used to have before, not just respect for the people because this just shows tremendous amount of organizational ability. It's something we need to, to try and begin to recreate in this country. And I sincerely hope that leaders of the various arms of security saw this magnificent, splendid organization, and they will begin to say to themselves, can we do this? Yes, they can if they really set their mind to do it.
But the shocking thing I'd like to interrogate is how terrible we've become over the years. Because you see, all of this pomp and pageantry, we used to have them back in the 60s. There was a place in Lagos Island, sort of like a cenotaph, where people go to lay wreaths on Armed Forces Remembrance Day. It's no longer in use. We had Well Street line parades, if I can remember, when people like Yakubu Gowon got married during the war here, and it was still at the cathedral on Lagos Island, and everything was well laid out. So where did we miss it? Is it that the educational system failed the institutions? We used to have very good diplomats from University of Ibadan, Ife, and the likes, and all of that.
I said
Zaria, and they were good heads.
Our system simply broke down, and you can trace it back to to the military. I started school here in Lagos at St. Paul's, Bitemeta. And then when my parents were transferred to Ibadan, we were living at Yagoku, and then we used to go down Okeado to school. The premier then, Chief Obafemi Awolowo's house at Okeado, the premier goes to work with only one motorcycle in front and his ADC in the car, period. The same with Akintola. But today, you see the convoy, sometimes stretching to 20 vehicles. And interestingly enough, when you look into that vehicles, in some vehicles, there's only the driver. Or the driver and one person. You begin to wonder what exactly, So the system broke down somewhere along the line. And I've been trying to say to myself, at what point, for example, did we change some of these things? I could actually attribute the case of this whole security thing that has, taken over completely, maybe to the assassination of Muritala. Because I remember that after Muritala was assassinated, when the chief of army staff at that time came to work, flies cannot even pass because they came to work with armored cars, armored vehicles, and took over the whole of 23 Marina, the then military, And subsequently from there, you began to see every military officer and governors begin to tighten up security and then stretching the convoy. And that's exactly, But there are so many other things. Our value system and everything just along the way simply collapsed. And I just think it's getting worse.
Okay, you mentioned protocol. Just two issues. One is foreign, the other is local. President Donald Trump, on his social media platform, Truth Social platform, has been grumbling that if he were the president of the United States, nobody would dare sit him in the 14th row, where President Biden found himself yesterday, that he would have been in front. But it was good for President Biden to sit at the back so that he could mix with presidents from underdeveloped countries. Well, I mean, in terms of protocol, you've talked about security organization skill. Do you think that the United States was poorly treated, sitting President Joe Biden at the back of the row? And secondly, the one that I say is local is something I raised in my back page column in this day newspaper today, which is that we had a very unusual situation in my view. I don't know whether I'm wrong, but I'll put the argument out there, that the president and the vice president of Nigeria both left town the same day. One went in the direction of the United States, the other went in the direction of the UK. I mean, and I asked the question, who they shop? Because it doesn't look cost efficient to me, it doesn't look administratively convenient, and given the circumstances in which Nigeria finds itself at the moment, it doesn't look like pure common sense to me.
I think the first, to your first question, let's just ignore Donald Trump and his ego. Look, in the order of the British with events like this, the Commonwealth comes first, and that's what the British did. And in any case, I think the President of the United States, if I remember, was sitting close to the French President, Macron, the other European leaders, and so on. So for the British, and with regards to the fact that the Queen was the head of the Commonwealth, this is their protocol. And they gave, in any case, look, again, they had already granted some concessions to the US president. I think he was the only one that was allowed to bring his beast, his transportation into London. Every other person was boxed from the airport to, you know.
Macron too, yes, and then the Prince of Dubai.
Yes, so, you know, Trump, everybody, you know, you remember that when Trump visited the Queen, he also broke protocol. He was told clearly, I guess he forgot, but that was Trump. Before the Queen could even step, he had gotten out of the, you know, where they took the salute, before he realized that he was not supposed to have moved until Her Majesty has stepped down. So I do not think any protocol was broken with regards to the British arrangement. And in any case, apart from Trump, I have not seen any other American or American officials complain. And if they were going to do all this, they would have actually informed everybody as to the protocol arrangement. So all the missions, diplomatic missions in Britain, had a clear-cut idea of where their leaders were going to sit. So no problem with that. As for that of, yes, it was, honestly, I have not read your piece, Ruben, but when I heard the vice president was out and the president also was taking off, my first reaction was, should anything happen in this country, who will deal with it? The leadership has just left the country and left us almost like orphans. You know, I think that, yes, I understand the age of the president, but I just thought that he could have done exactly what other leaders, you know. Look, the British Prime Minister, the new British Prime Minister, immediately after the first service, headed straight to the airport and arrived that same evening in New York. Yeah. And we could have done this. I know, for example, that the president, I think, is scheduled to speak tomorrow or Wednesday. I've lost whether today is Tuesday, right?
Yes,
yeah, I think
Tuesday.
he's supposed to speak tomorrow. So there could have been adequate time for the president to rest and delay. But for the president and the vice president to leave town almost at the same time, you know, really, I think we need to begin to look seriously into this and ensure that it does not happen again. And I recall that it actually, this is not the first time, if my memory serves me right. I I think when the VP acted, he flew to Ghana, if I'm right, for an ECOWAS meeting, but came back
The same day.
the same day. So, but really, I don't know where else this has happened, and it's not good for the country that all the leaders just left town.
Okay. You know, when we're talking about we could do it better, all of the things we're learning from this funeral, one word that kept on creeping into my head is institutional memory. And I'll give you the instance. The Queen planned about 2 state burials that I'm aware of, maybe probably apart from her father's burial. One was Winston Churchill. The second one is this, because she was part of the planning of that Operation Hope Not. But that happened in 1965. And over 50 years after that Winston Churchill burial, they still got the bulk of people that can still have the same institutional memory, that can do everything precisely, that can execute just the same way. And I keep benchmarking with Winston Churchill's burial because that's about the only burial that had over close to 200 heads of state just like this in living memory. And they pulled it off. What happened to our institutional memory? What happened to the tenants, the likes of them, Simeon Adebo? You know, civil servant extraordinary, passed on. What happened?
Let me begin by recalling that when I was in Atlanta, I was a member of the Rotary Club of Atlanta, possibly the largest Rotary Club in the world. Well over 65% of the members of that Rotary Club came from Coca-Cola. 30% of the members retired from Coca-Cola were still serving as consultants to Coca-Cola. When you look at the United States, you find that a couple of all the retired generals have gone back into one think tank, or they are serving as consultants to the military, or they are serving as one or two things to the universities. And so through that system, they maintain the institutional memory and they're able to remind and convince, contribute to policy planning or, and policy formulation and implementation. But the most important thing is that they at least bring back what has happened in the past to what is going on and they relate it. But in the Nigerian system, that is something that is missing. That is something that is missing. And for a long time, we've been saying that this needs to be recreated, whereby people who have served for 35 years and have had various experiences, and they are still relatively at 60, at 70, you just don't throw them away and said bye, for a very long time, because they are still needed. The experience, they've acquired over the, couple of years, it's something that we shouldn't lose. The same thing with the university. I was surprised when I went to Harvard, Kennedy School. One of the most interesting books I wrote on decision making was the Cuban Missile Crisis. I was shocked. I was just leaving a classroom and I saw an advert. It was there was going to be a public lecture by the author of that book. I was so excited that I had to cancel everything else to attend, and I met the professor who wrote that book, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Today, even you guys don't even invite some of the retired professor emeritus with all their vast experience to help us analyze some of the national issues. So these are things that we need to find a way to bring into the system because it's very helpful. And it will help those who've not had the benefit of experiencing some of these things to understand what happened in the past and how to do things moving forward.
Okay, let me move in another direction. The Queen's funeral, coinciding now with the United Nations General Assembly, the 77th session. President Muhammadu Buhari, we're told, is going to give a statement. They are talking about how educational development is very important to a nation's progress. And yet, ironically, yesterday, Nigerian students shut down the Murtala Mohammed Airport in Lagos. For over 200 days, university teachers have been on strike. Students are even saying they are going to shut down ports across the country. And yet we have our president talking about how the educational system is very strategic to national progress and development. How ironic. What do you think?
Well, Ruben, you said it all. It's really, ironic. And I think my first reaction is that I think the president is probably, trying to reflect on the theme of the meeting itself. I've not paid attention to Onga's events this year. Maybe he's trying to reflect on the theme itself. But I just think that irrespective of the fact that that could be part of the theme for this year's Onga, I think that the handlers should have found a better way of avoiding such issues for the sake of, credibility. You don't go and begin to talk of things like that when everybody knows that what's going on in Nigeria vis-a-vis education. That would be my response to that. They should have found, I'm sure they are going to speak on other, issues, but controversial issues or issues that were seriously challenged and that is, global, I think they should have avoided it.
As we go for another Onga, the role of Nigeria in the affairs of the world, will be called into question. This is President Buhari's last Onga. And it's going to be a time of taking stock. And the role of Nigeria in the world in terms of issues of climate change, security, the economy, the reaction after COVID-19. What kind of analysis do you make out of all of these headwinds we've had?
No, I think the question should be how does the president, tell the world what he has done in the last 8 years? Look, as we've been hearing in this country, he's going to present a very positive report of what has happened. But I sincerely hope that at the end of that positive report, he will lay out the challenges, not just faced by this country, but by Africa and the rest of the developing world, and how the advanced world, some of those who created some of this problem, would have to ensure that they contribute, to a global recovery plan that would, impact on developing countries like us. But on the other issues, which are local and domestic, there's probably nothing he can do about that, but just to present, to hope that after him, a good and better leadership will come into play. Frankly, you don't go out as president and demarket your nation. You present a positive view, irrespective of what's happening at home. The thing is, you must present a positive view. Never mind that the outside world knows the reality, but yours is to continue to present that positive view. Because all the missions in Nigeria, they write reports, and their leaders read them. The same thing that folks outside write reports, and the leaders here also read them. So, but going out as the leader of the nation, yours is to present a positive view and challenge the world to, where they can. Give us some assistance.
Yesterday we had the High Commissioner of the UK to Nigeria on the program, Katrina Lang. And one of the things we talked about included Nigeria-UK relations. And now we have a new dispensation in the UK. We have a new Prime Minister. We have a new monarch, King Charles III. Now going forward, and here in Nigeria, we are also in transition. By this time next year, there will be another, dispensation in place in many parts, particularly at the federal level. What should be our plans for the future, diplomatically, in terms of that bilateral relations between Nigeria and the UK?
Well, The good thing is that nothing dramatic will change in terms of our relationship with the United Kingdom. Whether you have a new king or you have a new prime minister, I don't see any dramatic change. And indeed, I don't see any dramatic change with the rest of the world. I think that what we need to do moving forward is to resolve some of the challenges, domestic challenges we have in the country. Because you see, foreign policy is not in isolation. There's a nexus between domestic and foreign policy. And so part of the respect you earn abroad also has to do with what's going on at home. So if the domestic environment is strong, effective, and efficient, it also reflects on the ability of the leader itself, when he goes out to project that strength, that, domestic strength to the rest of the world. And it's on the basis of that the rest of the world will react to you or will respect you. So our relationship with the British will remain as strong as it is. We may not have described it as a special relationship, but in some ways that's what it is. Because I think that the British, the Europeans, and the Americans, they are watching with keen interest. And they'll be relieved, come February next year, if election goes very well, irrespective of who wins. They'll be relieved if there's no violence and things just turn out to be good, that we had a very smooth, a very good election and smooth transition to the next regime.
All right, real quickly. There's a question too we put forward to Katrina Lang yesterday, the British High Commissioner here. As the funeral went on and the mourning, the issue of colonialism and empire still raised its head. What would you say as regards this?
I think I have been consistent in saying that, yes, there were issues still lingering on about colonialism, imperialism, and all these zim-zims that we had a couple of years ago. But the fact still remains, that we are 60 years as an independent country or more. Africa got its independence in 1960. 60 years, for me, was enough for us to have grown up. 60 years for me was enough to have joined the League of Developing Countries. 60 years was enough for us to have resolved some of these problems that now have become intractable. 60 years was enough for us to have built an economy that would have been one of the best in the world. And with that, the issue of colonialism and all this imperialism will probably have subsided to a large extent. Yes, it's colonialism and imperialism, they were evils. But at the same time, when you look at what's going on and what we've done over the last couple of years, yes, we've made some strides. But look, we could have done better, significantly better. And our children will probably not remember a lot of what happened, under colonialism. So I'm not saying forget the pains of colonialism and the rest of it. After all, what was the whole essence of fighting for independence? What was the whole essence of fighting for independence? It's for us to be able to develop on our own. Have we answered that question? Of course, not really. Yes, we are free. We're independent and the rest of it, but in terms of our development, where are we? And bear in mind that in the 60s, particularly with respect to Nigeria, virtually every editorial, that was written about Nigerian independence, there was so much hope around Nigeria's independence. We were seen as the light of the African continent. And look at what has become of us 60 years later.
was Times Man of the Year 63.
Precisely.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Joe Keshi, for joining us.